Revelation chapter 19, verse 10. And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, See thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and thy brethren, that I have the testimony of Yahushai Hamashiach. Worship Yahweh, for the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy. All right, I'd like to give in all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who rule well, who continue to teach us this truth, and salutations to Yuakim out there doing the work of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai sincerely. All right. The name of this lesson is the spirit of prophecy. All right. Because ultimately the way that we're gonna bring in, all right, the kingdom of heaven, when I say we, Lord willing, I'm one of those men, but the way that the Lord, all right, and the elect are gonna bring in the kingdom of heaven is not gonna be well, we as men are not gonna bring it through violence. All right, the Lord is gonna take care of that part, but we as men of the Lord, the way that we're gonna bring it is gonna be through prophecy, all right, through our words, letting the people know that this place is gonna go down. All right, reading the scriptures, all right. And as the scripture said, that is a testimony of Yahushai. All right, and that is the spirit. That Yahushai is the spirit of what? The spirit of prophecy. Right? Because people have this misconception that the Bible is just this book full of fairy tales, but little do they know that the Bible is actually a history book, all right, and it's also a prophetic book, and it lets you know where you've been and where you're gonna go, all right. And when I'm talking about the you in that statement, I'm talking about you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and the people that descend from them, all right, which are biblically known as the Israelites, all right. So you need to wake up because these prophecies are rolling. These prophecies are continuing on. All right. And in this lesson is not going to use videos as much, trying another type of lesson for other times where I cannot use videos. This is going to use different articles from different points, all right, that are outlining the beginning or the ushering in of these prophecies. All right. So we're going to get this scripture here. This is Matthew's chapter 1. And I'm gonna start at 3. Matter of fact, let me just start at 1. It says, and Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahushua said unto them, See ye not these things? Verily I say unto you, there should not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Exactly, because Yahushua knew of the incoming invasion. He knew that the Romans were going to sack. All right, he knew that the Romans were going to sack Jerusalem. It ended up happening in 70 A.D. All right, it says, verse 3, and he sat upon the Mount of Olives. Disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming from the end of the world? All right, so they wanted to know when was the end of the world. All right, and they wanted to know when it was going to be the end of the kingdom. All right, and it says, and Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Yahushua, or I am Hamashiach, and shall deceive many. All right, so that was one of the clues. All right, that someone was going to say there was going to be people talking that they are, who the world didn't really calls Jesus, that they are the saviors. All right. And it says, verse 6, and it says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. All right. And we're in that time right now. Every other news cycle is a situation between Russia, Ukraine, the US, China, trade wars. All right. Proxy wars. We got China and Taiwan. We got Iran bolstering up their nuclear arsenal. We got North Korea bolstering up their arsenals. All right. So these are all rumors of wars. It says, ye see that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Exactly. So at the end of the day, even though we see these things happening, the end is not yet. It said, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All right, so there's going to be conflict between the nations. All right, and we're seeing that right now. It says, in kingdom against kingdom, it said there should be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All right. And that's something that we've been seeing in general. All right. But those famines, the famines that happened in Venezuela not too long ago, a couple years back. All right, pestilences, this this pandemic that happened. All right. You know, these are all things that the Lord warned us of. It says, and earthquakes in diverse places, all right, the weather being all out of whack. It says, verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows. All right, so all these things are the beginning of sorrows. All right, this is the beginning of those mornings. All right. So I wanted to grab this scripture here in Second Ezra, which speaks about sedition among men. This is Second Ezra chapter 15, verse 16. Matter of fact, I'm gonna start at 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. Exactly. So destruction unto the world and its inhabitants. Why? Because the sword of their destruction is coming closer and closer, as prophesied. And it says, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. All right. So this is prophecy. Civil unrest, infighting, people fighting against each other, countrymen fighting against countrymen. All right. The neighbors fighting against each other with swords in their hands to kill each other. It says, for there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their own power. Exactly. So there's gonna be sedition among men. All right. There's gonna be people invading one another, and they shall not regard for their kings or princes. In other words, they're not gonna care about their governments. They're not gonna care about the police force. They're not gonna care about, you know, the laws. All right. There's gonna be raping and robbing and maiming. All right. And it's gonna be a very bad time. It says, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Exactly. So they're gonna be able to do whatever they want. And we're getting a small glimpse of that in France. All right, this is from crisis24.garda.com. I guess this is a security website, and this is article published July 3rd, 2023, at 6:13 a.m. It says France civil unrest likely to continue in cities nationwide through at least early July. It says protests associated violence over June 27th, police involved shooting likely to continue across France through at least early July. Event. Protests and widespread incidents of violence in reaction to the June 27th police-involved killing of a teenager near Paris will likely continue in cities nationwide into at least early July. Demonstrations and clashes first broke out in the Paris suburb of Nanterre shortly after reports of the teenager's death emerged, subsequently spreading to several cities elsewhere in the country, with levels of violence quickly intensifying. Numerous incidents of vandalism, arson, and looting have been reported in various urban areas nationwide. The numbers of arrests and injuries and the severity of arson attacks all decreased overnight, July 1 through 2, and decreased further, July 2 to 3. Peaceful demonstrations are taking place from 12 July 3rd in front of the town halls nationwide, calling for an end to the violent riots. I'm gonna skip down to this paragraph here. It says tensions will most likely remain high nationwide as authorities prepare for further rioting in the coming days. Public transport remains disrupted, with bus, tram, and rail services in major cities suspending or limiting operations. In the Paris region, the transport operator RATP has suspended numerous bus, tram, metro, and RER train lines. Details can be found by clicking here. Curfews have expired as of July 3rd in a number of towns in the Paris region and elsewhere across France. However, restrictions may be reintroduced if the security situation deteriorates. All right, so that's just a small example. This is what's going on in Paris. All right, this is what's going on in Paris and certain areas of France. And you know what? This is no different than what happened during the police shooting of George Floyd. All right, um, when George Floyd was killed by those police officers, he wasn't shot, but he was killed. um, it was the same thing all over the country, man, and it was in the midst of COVID. But guess what? This is nothing compared to what's actually going to be going on in these streets, man, all over the world, primarily here in America, man. These people just looting and breaking shit. But what's going to happen when all hell breaks loose, when the cops say no more? What's going to happen when people start running out of food? All right. That's when the scripture is going to really hit. It says, "For this shall be sedition among men and invading one another." They're going to be invading one another primarily for the reason of food. Because tied to these riots, tied to the sedition among men is going to be what is going to be famine. All right. It says, "For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor their princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power." So they're going to do whatever they want. It says, "A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able." All right. So he's not going to be able to travel between cities and go from here to there. Why? Because there's going to be widespread violence and widespread security forces trying to quell that violence. It says, "For because of their pride, the cities shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid." Men are going to be afraid in those times. Men are going to be afraid in those times, man. There's going to be gangs of men. All right, these women are going to fall in line because guess what? There's going to be gangs of men looking for women to rape. There's going to be gangs of men looking for men to rape, children to rape. All right, this is going to be an all-out insanity. Nothing that the world has ever seen before, man. Like nothing the world has ever seen before. It says, "A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." So that's what's coming to America. That's what's coming to the so-called white man's kingdom, and that's what's coming to all you nations that follow suit with the program of the so-called white man. All right. So this was part one of the spirit of prophecy. All right. Lord willing, we'll see you in part two. All right. Until next time, shalom.